when Karen, fueled by entitlement, stormed into a black family's home with a gun and threats during a surprise inspection. She was stunned to find police waiting inside, ready to turn her world upside down. It was a humid Tuesday morning in Charlotte, North Carolina, on August 19, 2025. Karen Mitchell, a 47-year-old white woman with a reputation for being overly assertive, was a property manager for a small rental company that owned several homes in the city suburbs. Known for her meticulous inspections and strict enforcement of lease terms, Karen had a habit of showing up unannounced at tenants' homes, often citing minor violations to assert her authority. Her latest target was a home of the Thompson family, a black family of four who had rented a modest 3-bedroom house for the past 2 years. The Thompsons, James, a 42-year-old high school teacher, his wife Angela, a 40-year-old nurse, and their 2 children, Maya, 16, and Jaden, 12, were well-liked in their neighborhood. They kept their home tidy, paid rent on time, and had never received a formal complaint. But Karen had sent them a vague email the previous week, claiming she received an anonymous tip about unauthorized modifications to property. The Thompsons were puzzled but agreed to an inspection, expecting Karen to schedule a time. Instead, she decided to show up unannounced, as was her custom. Karen arrived at the Thompson home at 10:15 a.m., her SUV parked crookedly in the driveway. She carried a clipboard with a checklist of lease terms and, tucked into her purse, a concealed handgun she'd started carrying after a heated tenant dispute the previous year. Karen believed the gun gave her an edge, a way to ensure compliance from tenants she deemed difficult. She knocked sharply on the front door, her impatience growing when no one answered immediately. Inside, James was in the living room, grading papers, while Angela was at the kitchen table, reviewing patient charts for her shift later that day. The kids were at school. James had been expecting a quiet morning when he heard the knock. He opened the door to find Karen, her face set in a scowl. "Mr. Thompson," Karen said, her tone clipped, "I'm here for a surprise inspection. There's been a report of lease violations." James frowned, keeping his voice calm. "We didn't get any notice, Ms. Mitchell. The lease says we're entitled to 24 hours notice for inspections." Karen's eyes narrowed. "I don't need to give notice for suspected violations. Step aside or I'll escalate this." Angela joined James at the door, her arms crossed. "What violations? We've done nothing to the house. You need to show us the complaint." Karen's patience snapped. "I don't answer to you," she said, pushing past James. When he moved to block her, she reached into her purse, pulling out the handgun. "Stop me and I shoot," she barked, her voice loud enough to carry to the neighbors. James froze, his hands raised. Angela's eyes widened, but she kept her voice steady. "Ms. Mitchell, put that gun down. You're in our home." Karen ignored her, kicking the door fully open and stepping inside. But as she entered the living room, she stopped cold. Standing in the corner were 2 Charlotte Mecklenburg police officers, their hands on their holsters. Behind them was a woman in a suit, her badge identifying her as Detective Lisa Carter. The Thompsons had called the police the previous day after receiving Karen's vague email, suspecting she might try something confrontational based on past interactions. Detective Carter had been investigating complaints about Karen's aggressive tactics from other tenants and had come to the Thompson home to gather statements. "Karen Mitchell," Detective Carter said, her voice calm but firm, "drop the weapon. Now!" Karen's face drained of color, the gun trembling in her hand. "This is a misunderstanding," she stammered. "I'm the property manager. I have a right to inspect." "You have no right to threaten tenants with a firearm," Carter cut in. "Put it down or you're under arrest." Karen hesitated, then slowly lowered the gun to the floor. One of the officers stepped forward, securing the weapon and cuffing her hands behind her back. James and Angela stood together, their expressions a mix of relief and disbelief. "You okay?" Detective Carter asked them. James nodded. "We're fine. Thank you for being here." Angela added, "We knew she was pushy, but we didn't expect this." Detective Carter turned to Karen, who was now visibly shaken. "Ms. Mitchell, you're under arrest for brandishing a firearm and criminal trespass. We've been looking into your conduct for weeks. Multiple tenants have reported harassment, and this just sealed it." Karen's voice was barely audible. I was just doing my job. Your job does include pulling a gun on people, Carter replied. You're coming with us. As the officers escorted Karen to their cruiser, neighbors gathered outside, watching the scene unfold. Word of her behavior had spread through the community, and several tenants had already filed complaints with the rental company. The Thompsons, shaken but composed, provided statements to Detective Carter, detailing Karen's history of unannounced visits and aggressive demeanor. The investigation that followed uncovered a pattern of misconduct. Karen had been using her position to intimidate tenants, often targeting minority families with baseless accusations to justify fines or evictions. The rental company fired her within days, and the district attorney charged her with felony assault with a deadly weapon and misdemeanor trespassing. The case drew local media attention, with outlets reporting on the Thompsons' courage in standing up to Karen's threats. James and Angela continued their lives, their trust in the system bolstered by the police's swift response. They received an apology from the rental company, along with a new property manager who promised transparency. The community rallied around them, with neighbors offering support and sharing their own stories of Karen's overreach. Karen's arrest marked a turning point in the neighborhood, sparking discussions about tenant rights and accountability. For the Thompsons, it was a reminder of their resilience and the importance of speaking out. The incident, once a moment of fear, became a story of justice, leaving an impact far beyond their quiet suburban home.